You're listening to XSGaming Podcast, a podcast for gamers by gamers, with your hosts Xander Skullion and James Gruesome, bringing you something old, something new, and a little bit of nostalgia too.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of XSGaming Podcast. This is episode 80. We're recording this on January 31st. I'm one of your hosts, Xander Skullion, and joined with me is the wonderful Mr. James Gruesome. What's up, James?
Greetings, everybody. You know, it's crazy. It's January 31st, like you said. We're already into 2016. Yesterday, it was kind of cold, and today you can go out in shorts.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I felt like last week it felt like winter. It actually felt like winter last week.
We had the ice and stuff that last week, too, I think.
Yeah, it's warmed up now.
It was so minor. Some places got it, really, really bad. Even in North Carolina, there was a couple deaths due to car wrecks, but it was just a little bit some snow and ice. Because I had people ask me, and they said, "You're working today?" And I was like, "I've been out in way worse stuff than this." And you've probably asked me that on those days too. It's like, yes,
yeah,
I'm at work.
Yeah, it's been a really weird winter season. I'm waiting for that like ice age to happen. It seems to happen around like February, March, when all of a sudden it just gets like crazy cold.
Yeah, that's what I say. February, March is when it hits, but I just, I'm kind of turning against the cold as I get older. Some of my friends, they just completely hate it. Me, I thought, I'll just start hating it now, because I'll probably hate it when I get really old. So,
when your bones start hurting.
Yeah, that's what they say. Winter just hurts. It's like,
Well, we get a lot of interesting gaming stuff that's happened since our last episode, and I'm gonna go ahead and tackle the elephant in the room, because we've been talking about this game since it launched on Kickstarter, and that is Mighty No.9 got another delay.
Wow.
Yeah.
Are you really surprised?
I know. It was just like I made a video to it, and when I was like, it took me a while. I was like debating. I was like, do I really want to make a video about this? I mean, it's getting to the point now where it's just like that. Like you said, does it really surprise you? And apparently, it got delayed this time for bugs found in online multiplayer. And I was just like, really? I mean, the thing is like a lot of people want this game because they're such big Mega Man fans. And of course, if you guys are listening, you don't know what Mighty No.9 is of course the spiritual successor to Mega Man, put out by Keiji Mifune with this new company concept. But I don't know. It's like when I heard that it was being set back again because of online multiplayer, I was just kind of like, why don't they just make that like an update? Just put the game out.
Can't you just patch it? Isn't that what people do nowadays? It's
exactly.
Just the thing. Everybody else does it. You can too. You're not making a cartridge. Just go ahead and put the damn thing out, because it's just, I think you still got those people that will defend it. I don't really have anything to do with it. I didn't pre-order it. I don't really care. I really like that Mighty Gunvolt.
Yeah, that's a good game.
I guess it's kind of like I really enjoyed that, but and I would play this, but I didn't back it, and I think it's just going to leave a real bitter taste in people's mouths a lot. I see more and more people. It is the point now where it's just kind of like, I don't think people really get mad about it. It's just kind of like a throw your hands up and just sigh and like, really, like I'm not shocked. It's like when you have a bad day on Monday. Like, are you really surprised? I expect Mondays to be bad. I plan on it. So it's just it's gonna come out eventually, and it's probably not gonna be amazing, and it's not gonna be worth that very long wait, and it's gonna leave a real sour taste, and they're gonna have to really, really up their game if they want to do something like this again.
Yeah, that's the thing, is they've hyped the game so much now from fans and, to Kickstarter. There's so much hype, and then there's been so much anticipation and so much delays that it's almost like when you're waiting for something this long, because it's been 4 years that this thing's been up. And when you've been waiting this long, it's no doubt when it comes out, it's not going to hit that expectations that people are looking for. I don't think it's going to be that bad of a game. I played the demo, And the demo wasn't that bad. It wasn't a great game, but at the same time, I'll go ahead and say this now, if anyone's listening and you're playing this game anticipating that this is going to be a Mega Man, like a new Mega Man, you're going to be very disappointed, because while it has some similarities, it's a totally different game than Mega Man, which is not necessarily a bad thing.
No, it's just one of those, everybody, if you haven't, just go play Shovel Knight or something.
Yes.
Not saying they're really the same, but they kind of got that just kind of feel. And Shovel Knight, I've seen more and more friends of ours and people online still getting it, as it's come out more on disc form. It's available everywhere. It's really so good.
It's amazing.
You got a game like that, it still comes out with some, kind of like download updates and such, and it's still, breathing deeply. It still has so much life in that game, and people love it and support it, and that's what, these Kickstarter things have. They have people loving it, supporting it, but they don't get treated well in return. So at the end of the day, you got to have a really good product, and it's just, like I said, I don't think it's going to be amazing. It'll probably be pretty good, but at the end, will it just be worth all this mess and all the hate and anger and disappointment? Nah, probably not.
Yeah, and speaking of Kickstarters as well, I did want to bring up, I don't know if you've been following this, James, but we all knew about the VGS, the video game retro console that was coming out, and it had, what made this so interesting was the fact that it was going to be a new retro console that played cartridges, and it had the shell of the Jaguar. The controller looked like almost like a Wii U Pro controller with like a SNES controller inside of it. I mean, it looked really interesting. It had, some indie developers backing it as well, but, they had the Indiegogo for it. And unfortunately, the Indiegogo didn't go through because there was a lot of problems with it. One was the price. The price was way too expensive, especially for games that they were going to put in cart form, but you can already buy on Steam for like $10. And they were talking about charging, I believe, $40 or $50 for the carts, and then the console itself was going to be like $300. It did not go too well. Well, the VGS is still technically not dead because it's actually going to be revamped on Kickstarter, and it's called the Coleco Chameleon. And they just put out the launch trailer for it a couple of days ago, and I mean, it looks just like the VGS. It just has Coleco Chameleon on the front. It's got a little bit of changes to it. It makes it look more like a ColecoVision. But of course, it's still doing the same thing. The cartridges that are running from 8 to 16 to 32-bit era. And when they did the launch trailer, what was really interesting was, they're really selling on the point that it's a Coleco. So they were showing a lot of Coleco and Intellivision games in the trailer, and I'm thinking that maybe those games might be built into the actual console. Maybe there'll be like two different cartridges that you can get that comes with it, like you get a Coleco cartridge and an Intellivision cartridge. It's still really open in the air, but what do you think about this, James? Like, are you still excited about the VGS?
No, I've not been excited for a while. The initial, sometime last year when this first came up, I was really supportive of the idea. I wasn't too hopeful, not in a bad sense. I wanted it to succeed. I was even thinking of backing it initially. I was like, wow, I just think the idea, this is really cool. But as it grew and went on, that's when the price went up. Their original price point they'd stated was, maybe $200 to $250. And then the last time it jumped up to, I don't know if it was like $4, I think, somewhere $4 to $450. And at that point it was like, man, and a lot of people, because I'd read the post on the boards and the comments, and people were like, man, I could get a PS4 or Xbox One. And that's my thought too. I said, because that's going to be where a lot of games are. Like, I don't know how long this other one's going to last. It's kind of like really like a niche collector item. But I really like the idea. I really did. But as it went on, it changed to where, and I guess you really kind of have to in this day and age, to where it wasn't really just a cartridge system. It was going to be where it could have updates and such. little bit more online function. There just wasn't a whole lot of games. Like you said, those are already available. Then at the cost, who knows, $30 to $60, depending on the size. I thought if they could got some companies that would make some exclusives for them, that would be a real, kind of item in their corner they could have. But at the end of it, the Coleco came in. But before the Coleco came in, that's when my excitement stopped. I heard about the Coleco. Coleco is just a name, that's all it is. And I mean, it's kind of cool. Part of me is, half of me is like, yeah, it's still kind of cool. But the other part's just like, I'm just not going to get behind that. It's just, as time goes on and we see more and more, maybe. I'm still willing. I'm open to seeing it, and I hope it does good. But just at that price, man, you're competing with the big systems. You could get away with the 200 to 250 price point. I think you really could. And maybe if it only had 10 games come out and flopped, at the end of the day, you still got a cool little item that hopefully had some fun games. But going up against the big guys like that, I really don't have much hope for it. It's going to be interesting to see as it goes along, but I just don't think it's going to pan out.
Yeah, I'm hoping it goes well in some ways. I mean, I will say that, I heard interviews from the creator of the VGS. He's also the owner of the Retro Gaming magazine as well, and that was very successful, and that's been, putting out issues, and it's been really, really cool. And, I hear the interviews, and the guy seems very passionate. He seems like, he's wanting to tackle this, niche market of retro that's becoming more and more popular. But yeah, the price when they had it on Indiegogo, I was like, you gotta be kidding me. And it was almost like the people that were really excited about it were the people that were just, there were high-end collectors. There were people that had, a fantastic video game collection. That's all they did was they collect retro, and they just bled and breathed retro gaming. And we are the same way, but at the same time, like you and I, we're I don't want to say we're like logical and resourceful, but we're the kind of people that we just like to play games, and it's not like we're, trying to collect them and we're trying to get like the value and internet attention or anything like that. And I think that's what it was going towards. It was almost like becoming, what our subject is going to be for today is almost like it was trying to be like a Neo Geo.
And some people did accuse them of kind of taking advantage of that retro collector market. Like they were in it just for the money. Sometime last year, there was a really good interview on the Retro League podcast with the guy, the creator of it. And this was in the early stages of it. And it was very good. And, they caught a little bit of backlash, too, from some people on the comments. Some people thought they were kind of, rude in some senses, where they'd be like, well, if you don't want to pay this, it's for the, the quality and the... And, they were just kind of defending their product, and maybe there was some people running the boards that said some things they shouldn't have. But, like you said, I wish them success. I'm still going to follow it and see what happens. But, man, it's kind of like those Nintendos that came out, those ones that were like $500.
Oh, yeah.
I saw those on, I don't remember whose it was, someone's channel, and they were using it, and it looked really cool. Like, that looked something like, if I had money to blow, I probably would buy one of those $500 Nintendos, but I just don't. Like I said, we try to be smart with our money. At the end of the day, we just want to have games that are fun to play. So if that system can get a bunch of just really good, fun, awesome games, then it could make it.
Definitely. And speaking of games, I don't think I had a chance to tell you this before the show, James, but I was in GameStop a couple of days ago. I was buying some Animal Crossing amiibos, and I was talking to the manager, and GameStop's been selling retro games online. They've been doing it now for a couple of months, but he actually was telling me that there's a chance that GameStops are going to be selling retro games inside the store. And we're probably hearing more about this next month when it comes out more. But it's supposedly they've been starting in some of the larger stores up in the Northeast, and then it's working its way down. And we're on the East Coast, so it's going to be hitting us first before it goes to the West Coast. And I can't remember if we talked about this, about GameStop selling retro. One of the things I did bring up to the manager, though, and it's already been reports that this has happened, and he couldn't really give me a 100% answer on it, was, we were going over the prices of some of the retro games, and some of them are actually pretty affordable. Some of the games that they had prices for, I'm like, that's actually not too bad. Some of the trading credit wasn't really that bad. But I asked them, like, man, the retro gaming now, we have stuff like reproduction carts, we can reprint labels. You can go on eBay, buy a tri-wig screwdriver and, take boards out of cartridges. It's not like how it was back in the 90s. I'm like, what are you guys going to do about this? Because it's already been reported, a couple months back, of people getting games online from GameStop and either the game's not what it says it is, like it's a different board inside the cartridge shell, or, it's a reproduction card. I'm like, what are you going to do when you guys take in trades, and how are you guys going to test it in case someone's trading in, Earthbound or Stadium events, and it's not the legit thing, and they're just, ripping off GameStop.
Yeah, and that's happened. Like you said, people have gotten the games, and from what I understand, the people haven't had any troubles with the returns. And when you get them through the mail, now with the ordering, sometimes, they have like one price. You might get it with the instructions, you might get it with a box. It's kind of across the board. But yeah, I know there was I think a Chrono Trigger. There was another cartridge I heard about, I think that was like red on the 64. There was only one game that was red. This was not it. People have just got those. At first they said they were going to have, intensive testing and, cleaning. And apparently that's just not true. I mean, did you really expect them to have all that? It's just one of those things that the consumer is going to have to be careful and, know their stuff. And just keep an eye on it. At the end of the day, it's another place just to check out for games. I don't hate GameStop, like I said before. It brings more of those games out. There's people who wouldn't even think of selling them on Craigslist or, maybe a smaller independent store, but they see GameStop and they want something new. Hey, I got this whole box. So, it's another place to check out retro games, and it's going to get some more out there in the open, but everybody's just going to have to be careful.
Yeah, I think that one thing that I'm kind of excited about, and I know some people are completely against it. Some people are just so against the fact that GameStop will be selling retro games. One reason why I'm not really that upset about it, I have my concerns, but to me, I think this could be maybe a way to help, the retro market, because we'll have an actual like corporate price point, because if they're selling a game on at GameStop, say they're selling the game for $60 to maybe like $80, but it's normally like a $120 game that's running on eBay, but for some reason GameStop's selling it cheaper. It's going to have to bring the value of that game down, because I'm sorry, if I go to GameStop and I can get the game inside the store, not order it online, but get the game inside the store $20 cheaper than somebody that's on like an online site or even a mom and pop shop, I'm going to go with that, because I feel like I have a little more security with it.
I don't really think in the full line, to me, that it could bring it down some, but at the end of the day, it's like, they might have a price point on this game, but do they have it? Can you even get it from GameStop at GameStop? And it might not be that widely available game. On some cases, I think it could just maybe overall, because the price point on everything really on like the Nintendo and Super NES has gone up. So maybe some of those titles that just shouldn't quite be so expensive could go down a little bit, but those really high ones, I think they're going to stay like that for a while.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be an overnight thing. I don't think this is going to be like a retro stock crash or something, and retro gaming price recession. I don't think
that would be awesome. That would be so awesome.
Would be. I would love it. I mean, I'm sorry. I would love to go into, a video game store and be like, back in the day, get a little bin and be like, oh, there's a shoebox full of Genesis games that are 20 cents a piece, like it was back in, 96, 97. And it's not like that anymore, unfortunately. But the last little piece of news that I wanted to talk about is Nintendo related. And it's brand new news. It just came out today. It's about the senior developer of Nintendo of America has left. He left the company. His name was Steve Okamoto. It says Emily Rogers has uncovered that Steve Okamoto of Nintendo of America, senior manager of developing relationships, has left the company. He started back in 1991 and left, and it seems that the third-party relations team will be shaken up by his departure, but Emily added that she believes that Nintendo NX will get decent third-party support. And this is from the website Play Resistance, I believe that's called. And, I remember I was talking to you about this before we started the show. I think that what it is a sign that Nintendo is starting to kind of change. I mean, they've gotten a new CEO since, Iwata's passing, and the new CEO of Nintendo, he was the president of Nintendo of America for the longest time. He was the president of Pokemon company. Before he started Nintendo, he was also a banker. He's a businessman, and he's been, very much influenced by the Western audience. And I think this could be actually a good thing. I mean, a lot of people are talking about how Nintendo needs third party, they need Western development, and this could be the door that could be opening up for that.
Yeah, it's just always interesting to see. Like you said, new head guy. Some people leave, and you never know what the circumstances are. Like, do they not like the way things are going, or did they retire? Were they asked to leave? It's still, I have nothing but, hope for Nintendo. They always keep managing to make it, and I'd like to see them. They've kind of been known, except in the handheld market, it's kind of like, those guys that everybody still kind of loves from their childhood, but they're just kind of hanging on by a thread. They're always last as far as consoles. But they have a lot of, good stuff still. They really do. I think they have a lot of great ideas, and it'd be nice to see them get more just kind of, open, just more welcoming, sometimes too, third parties, outsiders in a sense, and just kind of, not to really just sell out as some people would see it, but just to become more open and cooperative of everything to help them in their business and to continue to grow and succeed.
The way I look at it is, this guy, the new CEO of Nintendo, when he was the president of Nintendo of America, it was during when Nintendo was really, really big. I'm talking about the SNES N64 era. And I would like to see Nintendo go back to those roots. I'd love to see Nintendo be the way it was back in the 90s. And I think a lot of people want that. Even some of the people that absolutely hate Nintendo now, there's something in the back of their mind that was like, I would love to see Nintendo the way it was back in the Super NES days when, you had third-party development, you had, exclusives, you had, it was just the console to have. And I'd love for that to happen again, especially with this new age and technology.
Definitely, they would. And that's one of those things, because so many people, grew up with it. It's back when Nintendo was the generic term for video games.
Yeah.
Whereas now it's kind of been replaced by, Xbox or PlayStation. It really has. I mean, I think it's, great they've still managed to hang on. You always hear rumors, is Nintendo going to get out of the console market? Like, what are they? No, they just keep doing their thing their way. And maybe this guy will open it up, like I said, just to see a little bit more ideas. And there's other ways to do things and other ways to grow and still give people an amazing product.
Exactly. And, well, you guys, what we're going to do, since we're at the 30-minute mark, we're going to take a short break, and we're going to talk about a great product that we really enjoy, but we never actually got to own, and that is the Neo Geo. We were talking about the Neo Geo in this episode, so I thought without further ado for this break, we'd play some Metal Slug music. So sit back, relax, guys, and we'll be right back. And we are back, guys, and that was some wonderful music from Metal Slug on the Neo Geo, and that's what we're going to be talking about for the main subject of this episode. And James, I'm going to ask you, what is your first memory of the Neo Geo?
Mine would be in the arcade. It was at Putt Putt, and typically they had the multi-game arcade cabinets. They'd have anywhere from 2, I think, up to 6 games. And from what I remember, the very first one I remember playing was probably King of Monsters.
Oh, yeah.
That game really grabbed me. It was a mixture of Rampage and wrestling. And that just really appealed to me. And it was just really awesome. It was at the arcade. It was like, I love this game. I didn't really think of, Neo Geo yet as, any kind of, I probably hadn't heard about the home console or anything like that. I just thought it was really cool. There was this cabinet that had multiple games and you could just pick right there. And they were, all quality. They all looked like they could be standalone arcade games.
Yeah, that was the big thing about the Neo Geo is it was the first arcade cabinet that had interchangeable cartridges, and it was really preferred by a lot of retailers because, you didn't have to buy another board and swap it out on a cabinet or buy a whole new cabinet altogether. If you had, a couple of cartridges, you could put them all in there so people can choose the games, or, you can switch them out. So say, you had, Magician Lord in there for a couple of months and you're like, you know what, I want to change the game. You could do that on the flip. And that's one of the things that made it so popular. And
you got to think with the space too, because the thing that would normally take up 4 slots for 4 games you had in one cabinet, and then you could put other games because you always wanted to have the hot, popular ones. And like you said, as soon as a new one came out too, they could switch them. And from what I believe, I think, their boards and such that they used were, a bit cheaper, for the guys that ran the arcade. So all in all, it just seemed like it was a really good deal for them to have.
Yeah, and no doubt, not only was it more affordable and more logical for retailers in that sense, the games were such top quality. I mean, whenever you saw a Neo Geo cabinet, you knew that it was going to have a handful of games that you really enjoyed. I mean, my first experience was probably, at the Carolina Beach Boardwalk. That when the Boardwalk was around, I'd go there and play, Super Baseball Stars 2, or play Magician Lord, or Metal Slug, or Samurai Shodown, Fatal Fury. I mean, it was just so many great games that were on the Neo Geo. And what's really funny is the Neo Geo has been and we're gonna get into the console, the AES. Did you know the AES started out in 1990 and didn't stop production until 2004?
Yeah, that was, I'm sure none of us knew it was quite going on that long.
Yeah. Because the thing is the Neo Geo, the AES, was the home console, and it actually didn't even start out as a commercial home console. It actually started out as a hotel rental. Like, hotels used to rent these AESs to put inside their rooms that you could, rent a room and you could have, a gaming system to play on, and that's what they would do. And then they decided to actually bring it off into the commercial market. But what's really interesting about the Neo Geo is the Neo Geo, in a long spectrum of things, wasn't that successful compared to the Super NES and the Sega Genesis, but it was still very successful in its own special way. And one of the things that really made it not so successful was, of course, the price. The price of the Neo Geo was so freaking high. I believe it was like, $600, $700 when it first came out.
Definitely, with games, up to $300. Now, did you ever know anybody that owned one of these, back when they came out or around that time?
I didn't. I never even saw the console when I was real young.
I had a friend of a friend that I heard. It was this Korean guy, and I remember hearing he had one. I don't think it was a lie, I think he actually did have it, but it really was always a mythical thing. It's like, you hear about the console price. I remember probably in a Funko ad or something seeing games, and you're like, $200 for a game? Like, yeah. Man, like, it's not anything as a kid, if you were smart at all, that like you asked your parents for. Like, this was just something that you could not have, but at the same time too, you kind of understand, like, oh, like, this is the arcade. Like, you could take your home cartridge save and go to the arcade and play it there.
Yeah, that was another thing that was really revolutionary, is it actually had a memory card slot, and you could take saves and data from your AES, playing certain games on there, and take it to the arcade and put it in there, and that was really cool. And yeah, I never saw the console when I was a real little kid. I mean, I saw like magazine ads for it. I think one of the things I would always talk about was, in the back of GamePro or Electronic Gaming Monthly, how they had those crossword puzzles. This crossword puzzle contest, you remember those? And it would have like, the big, 50-inch, projector screen television with the, 20-inch speakers, and it had like a Neo Geo, and I was like, oh man, I'd love to have that. Because, I mean, that was the one thing back then. It was, a lot of us nowadays, we talk about graphics, we talk about, 60 frames, 1080, 4K, but the biggest thing back then is the game as good as the arcade port? That's what gaming strived towards with the home console markets. We wanted to have the arcade in the house, and that's what Neo Geo did. Unfortunately, though, it still had like arcade prices.
Yeah, I mean, it literally was playing the arcade in your home. It was the same game. For us, probably, I remember Street Fighter 2 being one of the first games that really, really felt a lot like the arcade. You know, it had that. But yeah, the Neo Geo, that price point was just, it was unattainable. It seemed like some type of a magical dragon of sorts.
And what's interesting too is, usually, we were just talking about how retro gaming has become so expensive. But theoretically, usually the consoles drop in price after a while, but the Neo Geo hasn't dropped in price, and it's still highly collectible to this day because it's such a pioneer home console. It's so amazing. And, one of the things that people say that they do that kind of help with the prices of the Neo Geo is actually it's cheaper to collect the cartridges for the arcade, the MVS carts. It's actually cheaper to collect those, and you can actually either get a modded adapter to put on an AES, or they actually have consoleized MVSs to put those cartridges in. And, the arcade cartridges don't look as pretty. They look you have to be kind of careful too because some of them might be bootlegs, but, they're just a big black cartridge with a white sticker that's like, this says the title of the name is like, King of Fighters 95 on the top of it. But that was, for the longest time, that was, and still one of the more affordable ways that actually collect for the Neo Geo.
Yeah, it seems like I heard one, the system was more expensive, but the games were cheaper. And the other one, the system was cheaper, but the games were more expensive. But they do have a lot of very supportive, dedicated boards that I'm sure anybody that's wanting to get into collecting can go to and ask for help and, advice to make sure you don't get things like bootlegs, because they are, floating around.
Now, one thing the Neo Geo did do is they made it a little bit affordable with another console, and that was the Neo Geo CD that came out in 1994. And it was a lot more cheaper. It was like $200 to $300 cheaper than getting a AES. The actual games, because of them being on CD, it was a lot more cheaper than cartridges. The cartridges were around $200 to $300, where the CDs were only $50, US dollars. But the only downside to the Neo Geo CD was actually it had a very, very slow CD-ROM drive. And the loading times are just atrocious. That's what I heard. But
and it is region free, and like many other CD systems of its time, you can play copies on it. And it also came with a controller. Neo Geo had always stuck to that arcade feel with the joystick. Mm-hmm. But this one actually came with a little pad. But you could use the arcade stick, in there. They were interchangeable.
Did you ever use the did you ever play a Neo Geo pad? Did you ever play one of those controllers?
No, I mean, just only in the arcade is really the only time I've played Neo Geo. I've never actually seen one in person. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's still one of those just unattainable things for me. I don't know. I can't even fathom having one of those.
I did get to play the controller back in the day, and the D-pad was actually very interesting because it was like a little clicky joystick knob, and it was really interesting. I didn't think I would enjoy it as much as I did, but it was really good for fighters, and that's the thing, man. Neo Geo was such if you're a big fighting game enthusiast, that's the console to have because it had so many fighters, so many shooters. I think there was only a couple of platformers, I think Blues Journey and 8-Man. Those were a little bit more platformy, but they were still kind of beat 'em ups and.
Yeah, now a ton of beat 'em ups too, because I love those. And what's interesting is I found out King of Fighters, one of the biggest name games on there. It's made up of characters from The Art of Fighting, which is one of their earlier fighting games. You ever played that?
Yeah, one of the things that I remember about Art of Fighting that was so oh my god, was the fact that the screen would zoom in and the sprites would be so freaking huge. That was such a big deal.
Yeah, I see. I remember playing that. I was really excited, and I think my brother, he'd rented it. EJ had, and I remember he told me it was terrible because we'd played Fatal Fury, and I wasn't a huge fan of Fatal Fury either. But King of Fighters combined those two games and made a good game. But originally, it was going to be a beat 'em up called Survivor, and much like Final Fight was going to be, Street Fighter 2 originally, but they went with a one-on-one fighter instead. I would have enjoyed trying out this beat 'em up if it had actually come out, but I think King of Fighters really made up for Art of Fighting and Fatal Fury, because Fatal Fury had the weird moving up and down in the background.
Yeah.
And Art of Fighting was just the characters were so big, but one of my favorite King of Fighters characters came from Art of Fighting. The guy who's either Ken ripoff.
The guy in the orange.
Kyo. Yeah, in the orange gi. Or Mr. Karate. There's one guy that's like his dad. He's Mr. Karate too. And then I like him. He's my favorite one, but he came from Art of Fighting. But King of Fighters, man, I love when you could have a team. That to me was always really just fun because it gave you a chance to try out a lot of different characters. Like you always had your one or two you stuck with, but you could use that third spot and try out, a new guy. And just such variety. I thought compared to Street Fighter, because even on Street Fighter, as many characters they have, there's still only a couple I like. But King of Fighters just has like an overwhelming amount of people and familiar faces and not so. And I like some of them had weapons. Some were gigantic. Some were like little tiny dudes. It was just really cool. The backgrounds I always thought were amazing. I really love King of Fighters.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of King of Fighters. There's actually, I can't wait for the new King of Fighters for the PS4 to come out. That's going to be really, really cool. And one fighter that I really like on the Neo Geo, because I'm like you, I'm not a big Fatal Fury fan. I mean, it's not a bad game, but I'm not as big of a Fatal Fury fan as I am Samurai Shodown.
I always look at my picture right now on the screen where I got the Fatal Fury hat on. I'm like, yeah, I hate Fatal Fury. I like the hat though.
I mean, it was a good game, but it was like you said, the jumping from the different perspectives was kind of confusing, and it just didn't feel natural to me when I played it. But man, Samurai Shodown.
Wow.
Dude, that game was just so badass. Like, I was like, wait, you get to play as these, ancient Japanese characters, and you have actual, Japanese weapons, and it was so cool. And you had like the little referee in the middle, that would like, round one, fight, and he was like, and you could actually fight him and stuff. Oh my gosh, man, that was a really good game. And
yeah, I don't see how anybody could not like that one, just with the weapons, the characters, it was just, man, it was really great. And for what I read, it was loosely based on the Maikai Tensho, which is a book of, kind of tales, some fiction mixed with real life. And there was a couple movies called Samurai Reincarnation and Samurai Resurrection that had Sonny Chiba that are based on those. So you kind of get a couple characters that are from Samurai Shodown. And it was the first one-on-one weapon-based fighter. And at its time, man, it was just great. The characters, the animations, all the characters had such character. Just really great, traditional music mixed in. Man, I don't see how anybody could not like that one. It was really, at its time, like, it really blew you away.
Yeah, and of course, Last Blade. Last Blade was so much fun, too.
That's one I kind of discovered. Well, no, I think I did. I want to say I did play that one in the arcade. Back when the arcade still had games like that. And it was kind of a spiritual successor to Samurai Shodown, but it still had like a different feel. And just, just all the stories with the characters, just, man, they really excelled, I think, at the 2D weapon-based fighters.
Yeah.
They really couldn't be touched. I mean, I can't really think of too many other ones other than Samurai Shodown as far as 2D. Probably just because none stand out, because if they did, they probably weren't any good.
Yeah, and you know what was really interesting about the Neo Geo was the fact that, they were pushing their home console, the AES, but Neo Geo was really interesting in the sense they made games, in-house. I think there was a couple of games that had, some, other developers that helped them, like Data East, I know, helped with some Neo Geo games, and Sunsoft, stuff like that. But most of the games were made by SNK. But not only did they, try to push to AES with their, arcade perfect carts, but they also made ports on other consoles, their competitors. So if you couldn't play Fatal Fury on the AES, you weren't screwed because they had Fatal Fury on the Super Nintendo. They had it on the Sega Genesis. And while they weren't as good, it was still interesting about the fact that you could still play it. It'd be like, if they made, Super Mario Maker for the Wii U and the PS4,
Yeah, and when I think of, SNK, I really kind of grew up with them too on the NES, because they got into making games for Famicom. They had a couple standalone arcade games like Athena and POW, Prisoners of War, and we got those on the NES, and then two games actually they made specifically for it were Baseball Stars and Crystalis.
Oh, I was about to mention that.
Which, Crystalis, it was called Godslayer on the Famicom, and, they wouldn't have anything like that over here. But nonetheless, Crystalis is still, wow. If you've never played that and you like Zelda, they just really, really knocked one out of the park, along with Baseball Stars, too. That's that is my favorite baseball game.
Mine, too.
Hands down. But yeah, even one of my favorite SNK games was Street Smart. And it was in the arcade. I always remember playing it at Big Lots. And I finally got it later on. I realized they'd made it on the Genesis. They didn't have it on the Super NES. And years later, I got the Genesis version of it. And also, there's a lot of SNK games available on the PlayStation Store for really cheap. I think they're like $3. POW's on there, all the Ikari Warriors games. Who can forget those? I wasn't the biggest fan of those ones, but they managed. There was some Ikari Warrior characters in the King of Fighters, actually.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, they took some from a couple, from a bunch of series of games. But it always seems like, in the 90s when that Neo Geo hit, just the Metal Slug, that's another one. Just amazing. It was like Contra, but it had so much more to it. Just the little animations, whether you get turned into a pig, stabbing some dude in the guts, the little emaciated dudes you rescue.
I always called the little guys you rescued after seeing Castaway. I always call them Tom Hanks.
Little Hanks.
Little Hanks. But yeah, I mean, I loved Metal Slug so much, and I always get flack for it sometimes because I love Contra, but I always say I kind of like Metal Slug more than Contra.
I might have to go with Contra, but I can't fault anybody for that. I might like Contra better, but I'd say Metal Slug is definitely more fun.
Well, the thing about the Neo Geo is the beautiful hand-drawn sprites, and Metal Slug had like so much great animation. Every character had, they actually changed her facial expressions. If you stabbed a soldier, like an enemy, who actually looked like he was in pain and stuff like that. And some of the other games I really liked on the Neo Geo as well, that were like war type games was like the Nam game.
Nam 75, I think.
Yeah, that was awesome, and man, there's so many great games.
The variety. I'll mention a couple that I really like. They're kind of first-person action games. Cross Swords, which kind of puts you in a medieval time, and you have battles. It's got some slight RPG elements to it, but you got to think this was an arcade game. And
it was like Punch-Out!
Yeah, Super Spy. That's another one too. I really, really liked those. Like we said, the beat 'em ups, man. Sengoku.
Oh yeah,
that's their standout beat 'em up. Burning Fight is that's not very good. Robo Army is pretty damn fun. I actually just played that one last night. It's just that beat 'em up feel with a little bit of Terminator mixed in. And one that I really like, and it's not good. It's called Legend of Success Joe. It's a boxing game, and I want to say I've played this on the Famicom or Super Famicom. So, it's a Japanese series. It's boxing, and it's a mixture of kind of beat 'em up elements where you have to fight multiple guys, and then you go into the ring and have a boxing match. And it's not really good. It pisses me off sometimes, but there's something about it that I keep playing it, and I don't get it.
Yeah, they had some wrestling games too, like Fire Suplex.
Man, I don't think I've played Fire Suplex. I did play 3 Count Bout, which it's a lot like Saturday Night Slam Masters, and I'm really iffy on those fighting wrestling games. I kind of like them, but I'm kind of terrible at them too. I was pretty good at the Slam Masters. Man, 3 Count Bout, that one's tough, but you got the fighting, you got the grappling. They're still kind of cool. Aggressors of Dark Combat. This is one, it really kind of drew me in. It's a one-on-one. It has the different planes of fighting, kind of like Fatal Fury, but people will throw random weapons, like a bat with nails in it, bottles, just different crap, and it's just kind of fun. It's one I really enjoy. Like, I got a lot of the emulators, so some days I'll just sit and play Neo Geo games. I really like their racing games. They have a over-the-top kind of off-road feel. Neo Drift, and I think Overtop is another one. They're just, I really like that style. It just makes it a little bit more fun. Waku Waku 7.
Yes. That's more like a quirky type of fighting game, too.
Yeah, Sunsoft made that one, and I think that one was also maybe on the Saturn or...
Yeah, it was.
It's weird. It's one of those fighters that's definitely over the top, big gigantic characters, little small ones. A lot of great shooters, Blazing Star, Arrow Fighters. It really had a lot of variety. Double Dragon, the fighting game. Technos did some Dodgeball. That was a good one. Windjammers is kind of cool. It's kind of like Pong, but you bop a little thing back and forth. I think there was a series because I played like Bank Beat and Battle Flip Shot. They all seem very similar. You have 2 guys and you're knocking the ball back and forth, and after you break down a barrier, you can like score a point, and there's some special moves. It's a little bit like the Super Dodgeball in a sense too. Definitely fun. Lots of ninja games, Ninja Combat, Ninja Commando, and Ninja Masters. One's a beat 'em up, one's kind of an overhead, and one's a one-on-one fighter. And they're all pretty good, but you had a lot, and these are just some of the ones I have. And I know there's, like you mentioned, that Fire Suplex. I think I've read about that one, but unfortunately I don't have that one on my emulators, but it sounds really cool. Just, man, they had a lot of good stuff.
Now I will mention that there was an actual failed Neo Geo, and that was the Hyper Neo Geo 64, and I'll touch base a little bit on that. It was released in 1997, and the Hyper Neo Geo 64 was conceived as SNK's 3D debut into the 5th generation of video game consoles, and it provided a hardware basis for a home console that would replace their aging Neo Geo AES, one that SNK hoped that would be capable of competing with the 5th generation. But in 1999, it was discontinued and only had 7 games released for it in the 2 years. It was a flop. And it's funny, that it flopped, but the AES just kept on pedaling until like 2004.
And the other one that's actually listed as their most successful and popular console is the Neo Geo Pocket Color.
Oh, yeah, I was going to mention that. The Neo Geo Pocket Color it's one of those handhelds that's becoming more and more popular with age. And the thing is, it's very affordable. It's not really an expensive handheld to collect for. I mean, I see them quite often. I eventually would like to get one because I see them quite often at my retro video game store. They sell them.
Oh, really?
They always have one randomly there for like $80.
See, yeah, I think that might be. I've looked them up before, and I want to. Maybe the 80. I mean, after shipping, that one might be. I want to say they were more around 60. but I might have mistakenly been looking at the non-color one. But either way, yeah, you can find them at an affordable price. My regret is I remember Rhino Games. Man, this was a long time ago, but they still had them in the store, and you could get the system, and like they'd sell these packets of games, and you get like 3 in a little, bubble wrap, like a toy or something.
Yeah.
And I thought about getting one a couple times, but I never did. And I hear nothing but really good things about it. The SNK, was the one they put on there? Was there an SNK versus Capcom?
Yeah.
That, which I've heard is like really good. There's some like card fighting games. It's got Metal Slug. There's probably just a lot of really hidden games on there that I've never heard of that are just really good.
Definitely. And we'll close the Neo Geo talk with one mention, and I got burned with this one. The Neo Geo X. Oh, that was released in 2012, and it was not all SNK. It was also put out by Tomo, and it was a open source based handheld that played Neo Geo games. It had 20 built-in games. It came with like a loading dock that looked like the Neo Geo AES home console. It came with the Neo Geo arcade stick, which I've used the arcade stick more for MAME than anything else, but it flopped. It was not the best emulation, and unfortunately they only came out with 2 more arcade hits for it. It was like these big cartridge shells that looked very reminiscent of the AES cartridges, but it would come with like a little flash drive that would have like 20 more games in it. And I mean, it had a really good library, and it's not the worst handheld console, especially if you don't know any better. Like if you never played like an actual Neo Geo, you're like, oh, this isn't too bad. But when you do play it and you hook it up to your TV, it's just, for the price that it was at the time, because it was like $250 when it came out, it's not what it was. And they actually got discontinued, and Tomo and SNK Playmore got into a little bit of a lawsuit where SNK actually put a cease and desist on Tomo to quit making this handheld because it was so bad.
Wow. And I will say too, on a good point, since that one was not, if there's a lot of these, well, it didn't mean that, just it sucks that ended up being disappointing, but there's many collections you can get on the PS2. King of Fighters, there's multiple ones. I think there's a Samurai Shodown. Neo Geo Battle Coliseum has a lot of characters, a little bit more obscure characters from some games. The SNK, was it Arcade Greatest Hits Volume 1 or something? It's got about 20 games on there with a lot of the beat-em-ups. There's a lot of ways to play these games. You can download a lot of them on the stores, of course, the Virtual Console. They're out there, and there's a lot of good ones. If you've never played them, there's probably some you're kind of missing out on, and a lot of y'all might really dig.
Definitely. And moving away from that, guys, of course, like James said, the Neo Geo, it's out there. It's hard to collect for if you want to get the AES and start collecting it that way, but you can still play the games on various different sources. But we're going to do a little short segment before we go into YouTube shoutouts and games we've been playing recently. And that's, of course, This Day in Gaming. And, of course, this is January 31st. One game that came out back in 2007, 2006, 9 years ago, that a lot of people don't like, was Sonic the Hedgehog. That was released on the PS3 and the 360, hailed as one of the worst Sonic games of all time, right next to Sonic Boom. I actually never played it. I heard it was so bad, I just never checked it out, so I can't really say too much about it.
I might play that one sometime if I ever see it for cheap, since it's supposed to be so horrible.
And a couple more mentions, of course, Dragon Quest VI for the re-release on the Nintendo DS came out in 2010, 6 years ago. Grandia 2 for the PS2, released in 2002. And Final Fantasy Tactics, I love Final Fantasy Tactics, was released in 1998, 18 years ago. So, yeah, guys, that's some of the crazy stuff. I mean, Skies of Arcadia, that's another one to mention. Let's see, Dragon Quest II for the Famicom, that was, released 29 years ago. Oh man, Final Fantasy VIII as well, 16 years ago. This was a good day in gaming history. The last day of January.
Definitely, man. There's a big list of stuff, lots of RPGs too.
Oh yeah, and also doing the YouTube shout out, guys. Definitely check this channel out. It's a good friend of mine. I've known him for a while. I met him through I Got Gameplay, and he's came back to YouTube and he's making new content. And that's Zach from Getting Your Nerd On. He does a lot of dumpster dives, a lot of pickup videos, and he actually has a series out that I'm probably going to be doing a collaboration soon, where it's called the $20 Challenge. It's where him and another YouTuber that he's collaborating with, they both have $20, and they compete on who can get the best pickups for that $20. And it's really interesting seeing, here's this person for $20, they got all this, another person got all this for $20. So definitely check him out. I'll have a link to his channel on the description of this episode, so be sure to check that out and give him a subscribe. Definitely subscribe to him. Give him a bunch of likes. He's a really nice guy. And without further ado, though, to close the show, we're going to be talking about games we've been playing recently. And I will start with you, James. What have you been playing?
Well, like I was talking about a bit earlier, I was playing some Neo Geo. So
Yeah.
a lot of those games I mentioned, definitely was playing some King of the Monsters. I'll recommend that one again too. The first one's a bit more of a wrestling fighting game. You're fighting over the city, crushing buildings and pile driving people, giant bugs and gorillas. And the second one was a bit more of a beat 'em up. And they kind of changed it up, but I really like the formula they used on the first one. That one's just really fun. I also managed to actually play an RPG. I know I told you by accident. I got a Harry Potter game on the Game Boy Color, and I started playing it, and I kind of thought it was going to be a Zelda type game, but it ended up just being like a straight RPG. But I sat there and I played it for a while, and it's kind of fun, just to play a little basic one like that on the Game Boy. And I'm kind of half debating when they release them on the store of actually playing one of those old Pokemon games.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know, like I said, I've never played a Pokemon game. I have two that I've never played, and I always hear about those original ones being so great, and I might actually try one out.
I think they're only I think the download's only $10. And it's got wireless as well. So if you download it, let me know which one you download. If you download blue or red, because I'll download the opposite and we can trade Pokemon.
Yeah.
Since we don't have to worry about a link cable.
Something I never thought I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, Pokemon's a lot of fun, man. It's a very, very fun RPG, if anything. And me, on the other hand, I've been playing a lot of Neo Geo too. Actually, that's probably the reason why I wanted to do this episode. I've been playing Metal Slug 3. I've been playing that. SNK versus Capcom, which is still one of my favorite fighters. I love that game. This plays so well. And I also played Prehistoric Isle. It's a dinosaur shooter. That's a lot of fun. And other than that, other than a little bit of Neo Geo here and there, I got a very big hankering to play some Sega Genesis and to play some Revenge of Shinobi. I don't know what got over me, but I actually had surgery last Wednesday. I had a wisdom tooth pulled out, and I stayed home from work during that surgery. I mean, I was fine the next day, but I was kind of loopy on Wednesday and just sore. So I just sat there and I just played Revenge of Shinobi, and man, that's still one of my favorite all-time Genesis games. And I just started playing last night, actually, from recording this. I'm giving this game another try because I only played 2 hours of it and got turned off. But Final Fantasy 13, I'm playing Final Fantasy 13 again, and I'm planning on playing some more after the show. And Final Fantasy 13 gets a lot of hate, A lot of people don't like Final Fantasy 13, and I can see why. It's very linear. It's not as you don't explore as much. I'm not as connected to the characters as I am to some of the other Final Fantasies. But I will say that I think it's one of those things, and I think every fandom has this. There's that one game, one movie sequel, one comic, one television series that it's just popular to hate. You know, it's just like everybody hates it, and some people have never even played it or never, experienced it, and they're like, it's trash because everyone else says it's trash. And I think Final Fantasy 13 falls in that category. I don't think it's as terrible as people say it is. It's not great, but it's by far not the worst RPG I ever played.
It's terrible. I've never played it. I tell you one Neo Geo game I'd recommend you try out. It's called Cyberlip.
Oh yeah, I meant to mention that. It's very much like Metal Sluggish, Contra-like.
Yeah, it's like an early Metal Slug.
Yeah,
Definitely
it's really fun. Also, Mutant League.
That one. Did they do that one?
Yeah, that was a really fun beat 'em up.
That one. Mutation Nation. That's what
that's what it was. Mutant League. That's not right.
So you punch the guys and they kind of melt into like goo. It's got that very kind of like just toxic nuclear Holocaust leftover gang world going on.
It's like Toxic Avengers meets Streets of Rage.
Yeah.
It's really cool. But yeah, guys, this is going to conclude another episode of XS Gaming Podcast. We're kind of running out of time on this one. We got so passionate about the Neo Geo. But I do want to say, guys, again, check out Zach's channel, Getting Your Nerd On YouTube. That's going to be on the description of this episode. Be sure to check his channel out. Also, if you guys are listening to us on Podomatic, we also are on iTunes, so be sure to leave a review for the show to make it more searchable on iTunes database so we can get more listeners and just, build more of a community. Speaking of good community, you can also join our Facebook group page, XS Gaming Podcast on Facebook. And like I've told some of the new members, we have new people that join frequently, and they always ask me, because they're also YouTubers, or they might have a podcast or a blog, and they're like, hey, can we share our content? Yes, it is highly encouraged. I mean, we got some great podcasters a part of the group page, including like the Retro League. Our good friend Rob, he's a member of the XS Gaming Podcast, and he shares all of his episodes. We have like Kid Shuriken from YouTube, awesome American guy that lives in Japan and does a lot of pickups at Hard Off. And Carcamo Gaming, pro wrestler from Panama, who's also an avid amiibo collector and just a great guy and video game guy. So yeah, we have a very colorful community, and most of all, really, really nice people. So be sure to join that as well. And last but not least, if you want to check out our archive episodes that may not be on Podomatic, be sure to check me out on YouTube. That's youtube.com/Xander Skullion. For various different videos, from reviews to unboxings and Let's Plays, and also archives of the XS Gaming Podcast audio podcast as well. As always, guys, thank you for listening, and as always, happy gaming.
Have a pleasant evening, everybody.
Can't get enough of XS Gaming Podcast? Be sure to check out our audio podcast on Podomatic.com. You can also subscribe to us on iTunes. And if you have a YouTube channel or podcast you'd like to share, be sure to check us out on Facebook on our group page and join the community. As always, guys, thank you so much for all the support, and happy gaming.